All right. So, everybody, I want to welcome you today to the Dylan Gemelli Podcast. And I have a very, very special guest. I cannot tell you how excited I am to have him here. This is Hella Mark Harley.
There we go.
Yes. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. And thanks for getting my name right, because somebody texted me this morning, like, "What's up, Mark Haley?" And I'm like, I feel like a dick for correcting you, but people don't want to see, they see the Harley and they want to change it into something else. So I'm glad you didn't do that. I appreciate it. But and I'm glad you're excited to have me on. It was cool talking to you a little bit yesterday.
Yes.
For today, and we realized we have a lot in common, I think.
Absolutely. So, guys, I'm sure many of you already know who Mark is. He is all over the place. He's done some amazing things. I would say check him out. Google his name, see all of the things he's done. Couple controversies, but a lot of absolutely amazing things. And we're going to get into all of this today. Mark is an absolutely tremendous guy. Like he said, we talked, now and got to know each other, and even way cooler than I even expected. So I'm really looking forward to this one, man.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really cool to hear people's perspectives, who are similar generation might have gone through, some of the same things, just even experientially, because the way that things are with the internet today with regards to PEDs. I mean, we have this ocean of information, just so much harder to sort of seek out. Back in the early stages of the internet, when I was trying to figure out, I'm watching reading all these fitness magazines, and paying $5-6 for Muscle and Fitness, and all these guys are 300-pound Nasser El Son babies telling me it's muscle tech. That's my secret.
Yeah.
At the time I bought it, because I'm naive. I'm 15 years old and I don't know. That's what he said. Why would they lie to us? Why would it's that big of a thing? Why isn't everyone talking about it? And then you slowly find out, you're like, oh no, it's not the creatine or the protein or the pro hormones even, because there's a time when Mark McGuire kind of threw us the red herring. It's androstenedione. So I went out and bought androstenedione. I'm like, I feel like this doesn't really work as well as he's saying it is.
Not so much.
Yeah, because it's kind of like, I remember it was like, in theory, this could turn into testosterone in your body, but it's like, does it? I remember getting side effects. I remember it I had a nasty mood while taking it, the androstenedione, the norandrostenedione, but I can't say that I'm like, I feel like I've gotten, better results naturally, or really, if you're doing anything wrong, especially like I said, the mood thing, but I'm like, I was also not getting great sleep, and that's probably the biggest factor, is where it's like, give me a guy you can take juice and get the same results as a guy who's natty if your sleep and nutrition are on point as a natural. And I experienced it before, where I'm like, I really thought this would make up for my fucked up sleeping schedule, but it doesn't at all.
What's funny? When they banned the pro hormones, and then they started kind of capsulating SARMs and marketing SARMs and everything, then they started coming out again with 4-andro and all these different types of andro, and just pushing the shit out of these and making them sound so great. And I used to tell people all the time, don't get your hopes up, because these don't do a fraction of the things that they're saying that they do. It's pure marketing. And they kind of revitalized that after, and you pointed it out, when Big Mac was really pushing them about, that's what he was doing, when in all actuality, that's really not what he was doing.
He was just juice out of his mind. I mean, it'd be interesting if they actually opened up, because they finally admitted to taking steroids, but it's like, okay, but I want to know how much you're taking, because Mark McGuire, you look back at his early days, and that's a guy who's kind of tall and lanky. He's not particularly muscular. He gained tremendous size over the years. I mean, him and Barry Bonds, when you look at they're like fully grown adults, and it's like their arms look skinny,
No, I know. And, I grew up, I'm the biggest A's fan on the planet. So I know literally everything you could know about Jose Canseco and Mark McGuire. I mean, inside and out.
And I thought he was the coolest growing up. I thought Jose Canseco and Mark McGuire were the coolest, as well.
I have a poster from when I was a kid and I saved it and preserved it, and I got it up in my game room in there, and it's the Bash Brothers of Canseco and McGuire. I mean, I literally just, oh my gosh.
My aunt has that in her garage, and Battle of the Bay. They were at the World Series game when the earthquake hit.
Oh shit. 1990, man.
Yeah.
1990. I remember. I was in second grade when that happened.
Yeah, I know. I remember being really young, but like hearing about it, there was like, because it's a crazy place to be, like in a stadium that big, and you're like, we gotta get the fuck out of here now before people start stampeding.
Yes, actually, that was '89, I think, because they played Dodgers, Giants, Reds. But anyway, when you brought it up, McGuire, and this is one of the things that pisses me off about people and media with misconception. McGuire was still hitting. He broke rookie records for hitting home runs. It's not like that taking steroids automatically made him hit bombs. Now, when he went from Oakland to St. Louis, and as he got older, I mean, his size was just fucking entirely different.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
insane. These baseball jerseys, like a baseball jersey can, like, all you wouldn't necessarily know that I'm muscular baseball jersey, but if you're big in a baseball jersey, you're huge.
Oh yeah, totally. And when you brought up Barry Bonds, if you really go back and look at Barry Bonds, he was, and I'm pretty thin now. He was like rail thin. Next to me, he would have been rail thin, and I'm already, small enough as it is now at this point. But his transformation was way excessive.
Yeah. Where if you're coming into it, because like I really wasn't, I just didn't have the memory because I hadn't watched baseball in so long. Going back and just doing a side by side, you're like, oh yeah, that's like 40, 50 pounds of muscle.
Oh, minimum.
Adults don't put it on that late. But
no,
your other point about the difficulty of it all, I remember hitting a fastball of any speed is really difficult. I remember going to the batting cages and trying to do like 60 miles an hour. I think, oh yeah, I could do 60. And I maybe clipped one out of like 20 pitches,
Yeah.
Like not a hit, just like, my bat like touched the ball. And I was like, oh, like a 12-year-old could strike me out. Like every single time. Hitting the same area over and over, not to mention curveballs and other, tricks that a pitcher might use. But
and another thing a big misconception too is that people will say, oh, well, they're taking HGH and they got massive. And it's like, HGH doesn't get you massive. HGH does not do that at all.
Yeah. And the best I've heard about it is that you can kind of use insulin and HGH to lower your anabolic load, by like 50%. If you do it right, you can make up for this instead of taking, because I think there's diminishing marginal returns on everything. So like, if you're taking 2,000 milligrams of test, could you cut it down to 1,000 and add HGH and insulin and pimp that out? That's what they say. But yeah, I agree that because guys have come to me before about like, I don't want to do steroids, but I want to do HGH. And I'm like, you're absent steroids, you're probably going to be very underwhelmed with the results.
Well, you have to. That's media nonsense and bro bullshit, but you got to understand what it does and how it works. And the total basis of that is really more so the longevity of the use, the healing properties, the, fixing your skin. And then you can get lean muscle, but the extended fat loss you get from it and the leaning out and people don't understand, pitchers used it because it was rapidly healing them. It wasn't because it was making them strike people out. They were just healing injuries a lot faster, and I mean, that's the main use.
Yeah. But we really attribute a lot to it these days. It's where people are like, oh, it completely changed bodybuilding. And it's like, did it? Or, because to me, I look at like, there's this different training method, fucking a guy like Dorian Yates just trained way different than Arnold. Arnold would go and hit chest 3 times a day. And Dorian Yates is like, I did 1 set for chest,
Well, and that's it too. Genetics plays such a significant role in this. You don't just start taking a bunch of shit and get massive. You got to have some genetics too to go along with it. You can still get big. I'm not saying that, but if you want to get Olympia big, I mean, you got phenomenal genetics. I mean, clearly, and besides anything that you've ever used, it's got to come down to work ethic, diet, and genetics, right? I mean,
yeah. When I first started lifting weights, probably around 15, I probably started like fucking around in the weight room, not knowing what I was doing, but I really immediately started liking it. And I think that's the key to, I think young people have to go through, and you could be, I think you can safely lift weights younger than that as well. I just think that you have to it has to be something that you fall in love with.
Right.
Because otherwise, I don't know how I would have figured things out on my own. I guess you could have a coach, but I just remember being like, I lived to lift every day between the ages of, 15 to 20 or whatever. So I was pretty big by the time I, finished prepping for my final season of college football. I was probably like 255, moderate body fat percentage. But I just was still like really enjoying hitting PRs and really like going to the gym by myself, I don't need a gym buddy, or all these little things where I go learn to fall in love with it and be obsessed with it. And, meal prepping and all that stuff. I don't know if I just, and I don't always do that as an adult, but I remember like when I was preparing for football or taking the lifting really seriously, like everything mattered to me so much, and I've just, so I've gotten to see where the differences in results between like, my training is inconsistent, but my results will fall on a cliff. Even though, like, I'm lifting a few times a week, but if you're not hitting the rest and the food in as precise a way, or even pushing the training, because like I think a lot of people don't even realize, like I've experimented with doing higher frequency or full body or upper body and lower body splits, where like when I first got into it, I used to think like, you can only hit chest once a week, and then I was like, I'm doing some sort of chest exercise 5 days a week, right? Which you can do if you don't become sore or you don't hit it too hard, but those are really interesting results too,
Right.
But I just am a big advocate for like experiment and if you like something, do more of it, because not everyone's going to like bodybuilding training. Okay. So why not Olympic lifting, or why not powerlifting, or why not your own circuit training or CrossFit or whatever, I'm a big advocate.
Yeah.
Like there's probably something out there that you like, and
Absolutely.
it's okay to lean into that.
Well, and I think part of the problem too is, and like when you brought up the magazines will give you, like they used to give us cookie cutter types of lifting, but that doesn't work for everybody else. And this just like steroid use, just like training, just like really anything in life, everything is trial and error. Your body's different than mine, than the next person, than the next person. And so like what works for you probably isn't going to work for me the same way. And people don't understand that. And it's kind of like, you got to go in and you got to shock your body. So you need to put in eccentric movements, some negatives. You got to switch the ratios that you're doing, switch the orders that you're doing. Because if you don't shock your body adapts, and you actually can set yourself backwards. And people they get kind of, how it is when you get kind of caught into a certain routine and you just kind of do it. And before you know it, you realize like, shit, 5 years went by and I've been doing the same thing.
Yeah. And have I progressed? So I'm very aware of that. And even, looking at it for myself now, because I've kind of been doing bodybuilding training a lot this year and higher volume stuff, when in the past I've done more because of a guy who I train, who likes me to train with him. And this is kind of like how he likes to train. So I'm like, all right, I'll kind of, maybe do more of this than I normally would. But I miss even things like running or doing high intensity exercise, because bodybuilding doesn't, it's like, it can be pretty standard. You're taking certain rest periods, whatever. Whereas I used to do and gotten phenomenal physique results from this, I would do like a full body circuit that would only take like 30 minutes, but it'd be like push, pull, like squat, hinge, and abs. I do those 5 like basic movements, so maybe you're doing a shoulder press, maybe you're doing a bent over row, maybe you're doing a front squat and a RDL, but it's like with the same weight. So I designed them to be like, if you're in a rush, you can go to the gym and, take 2 dumbbells and use them all for the same things. You kind of have to like, imagine what could I use 2 50-pound dumbbells for, and what would those reps look like? But because you're also going nonstop and resting between the rounds, then it also offers this high intensity, training effect that I think is really good for fat loss and just building your work capacity. Like working out in a normal bodybuilding way is way easier after you've done a lot of circuit training. You're like, this is fucking a cakewalk, But if you're really bodybuilding training will wind you,
I agree. And that's muscular endurance. And people consider cardio just like kind of what I do every day with the 10-mile-a-day runs and things. But that's not all cardio is. Muscular endurance, just like you said, is a big deal with your training. And you can get multiple cardio workouts just out of doing that. Quick supersets, slower rest periods. And people don't realize that that's part of the problem, I think, where people stall out or don't make the gains, is they're just not educated enough on it. And that's totally understandable. What comes like first nature to me and you is like not so much to other people, what I mean? And they need, coaching. They need more education on what they're doing instead of just going in there and winging it and not really getting anywhere. And a lot of people that write, I'm sure write me all the time. It's like, well, I need steroids. And it's like, no, you probably need to look at what you're doing and make changes there first.
Yeah.
You don't peak out in your 20s. And that fucking makes me cringe.
Yeah.
You know what? That I'm peaked out and I'm 24 and I'm like, bro, no, you're not. You're not even halfway developed yet.
Yeah, there's so many variables that I would look at to their training. And that's not even a question you can answer in writing. It'd be like, I'd have to see you work out.
Exactly.
Probably multiple times to check, like, even, and this is why I'm a big advocate for high intensity training. Like have you ever heard of dog crap training popularized by Dante Trudel? It's like,
I have, yes. So I don't know a lot about it, but I've heard of it.
I remember reading about it in the early 2000s and used it and really liked it. I've used it enhanced and natty and felt that it was really good, even on a calorie deficit, just because the workload is so small, but you really can focus on, like, I'm trying to hit a PR, like a total rep PR for each of these, like, movements that cover my upper and then lower body. And what it teaches you, because I'll do like a summary of his training program and send it out to people. Like, I made an email because I was like, a lot of people would ask me for programs and I'm like, I'm just going to kind of write down like one of the things I've done in the past so I can send it out to people in as clear language as I can. Because maybe I did it for my brother and then I'm like, oh, I have this on hand. I can send it out to people. But what it does is, because if you tell a beginner, okay, we're doing this 30 set chest exercise, he doesn't understand how to modulate intensity. So you can't even like, is he going to failure on all of those 30 sets? Does he know how close to failure he would be on the, ancillary exercises? If you really reduce it down to just a handful of sets per muscle group and go, you're going to like gun to head failure, then you'll teach the person to understand what actual intensity means. Like, because that's what I found is that you take a beginner and often that's the first thing they don't understand is, what does failure actually mean? Some people I think intuitively do that. It's like whatever it is, maybe if you come from sports or understand what it is to like push through this pain threshold or discomfort threshold, because it's never comfortable to fail at a weight. You're contorting your body and your first instinct is to stop. But then you're going, like, how ugly are you going to make your face contorting it to like lift this weight? And, the tension in your body is never comfortable to fail at, a free weight or a machine exercise. But if you don't understand that, then you like will never understand what failure means almost,
Absolutely. That's a good point too, because terminology and vocabulary is easy to misconstrue and not understand. You know what I mean? And so, and even I tend to go more hypertrophy training a lot when I'm trying to gain size, right? So when you say 8 to 12 reps, 80% of your 1 rep max, that's like real easy to people like us, but that's not so easy to other people. And it's like, sometimes you got to sit down and study the craft before you go do it and learn the terms, learn the verbiage, understand what it means. Because people take things like this and make it like it's so easy, but then you go in there and do it and you're just kind of fucking lost. And I'm sure you see people in the gym that are just lost, and I'm busy and I'm trying to get in, and really I'm like you, I work out alone. My wife likes to go with me sometimes, but I kind of make her do her own thing now because I just can't. When you get in the zone, you're in the zone, right?
Yeah, and I really like to focus on my work because I'm thinking about what's next, or I'm thinking about the sets. It's like one of the few times where I go, I'm actually focused on this thing and then what's coming next. Because in a commercial gym also, you're thinking about, like, you're like eyeing the other machines. So you're like, I'm modifying my workout as I go along too. And if you're with somebody, it's hard to socialize and like keep your eye on like, oh, that person's on the leg press, so I'm going to have to use the leg extension next, or, just improvise as you go.
Absolutely.
About, what you're doing as you go. So
I don't know how you are, but like, I don't have a ton of free time. And so that's like Dylan time when I go to the gym, you know what I mean? And so, and I'm sure you get stopped more than me, people that recognize you, but it's like, you want to be polite, you want to talk, and I do, but it's like, fuck, like I want to get in here and work, you know what I mean?
Yes. Well, I consider it like, I don't interrupt. I really try to not interrupt people more than saying hi. I think regardless of if you're like popular on social media or not, if you go to a gym for long enough, you're going to make friends. you know,
Yes.
if you're not like completely closed off to it. And then, yes, sometimes people I go like, you're here lifting too. And you just like talk to me for like 15 minutes between my sets. And I'm like, you know, and I don't want to, you don't want to be rude the first time, but it's just like, so I'll just kind of like, I'm just going to see how long, you know, I'll give somebody one chance to kind of be conscientious of how long they're talking. But then I know just for the next time, I'm like, oh yeah, hey, you know, like I'm not going to cut them off at the 2-minute mark. But yeah, it's often surprising how that's because I consider that a basic element of gym etiquette. Some people just aren't in a rush. Some people use that for their social time. You know,
I agree.
they get too much alone time. And so they're like, you know, the razzle dazzle of the gym is what excites them or motivates them to go to the gym. Whereas it may be more of an inconvenience for other people. You know, if you know exactly what you want to do, or you just want to get to that place where you're exhausted, you know, I could go on a run too, you know, up a hill and kind of feel that feeling. But you said you go on a 10-mile run every day, huh?
Yes. I do it 5 days a week. I'm starting at the older I get, I'm fucked up everywhere. Like I've got a busted toe. I've got like shin splint sometimes. Broke my back twice. So sometimes I do 15 miles on the elliptical to compensate the 10-mile run. I kind of have to go back and forth, but I do about an hour and a half of cardio the 5 days a week. Yeah. I used to do it more, but I'm getting too old, man. Like I can't, my body just doesn't hold up like it used to. And, you know, as the week goes on, it's like Monday's fucking great, you know, and Tuesday I'm like, okay, it's kind of Wednesday. It's like, whoa. And every day it gets a little bit. And then Thursdays I get up at 5 a.m. and do it really early. And, but you know, I've been doing it so long, it's kind of second nature because that's the only time I get to watch TV is really like when I'm doing cardio. And so I, you know, and then
you can watch Ozarks on an iPad while doing the Stairmaster.
Yes.
Pass an hour, you know.
It helps a lot. It really does. And I like sports debate shows and like, you know, I watch WWE and that's kind of what I watch down there, you know, and blast some music and just kind of roll. I've got all the cardio at home. So I have a commercial treadmill and elliptical and I have a 70-inch screen with surround and I just turn it up and fucking get lost.
That's perfect. Because again, the biggest issue with cardio for me, or like, especially on a treadmill, is like, it's a battle against your mind to check the time and just be like, I'm fucking bored. And I think it's just this great exercise in and of itself of like finishing something that you said you would, you know, like I said I was going to run 10 miles. And even though I'm bored, like it's the constant discomfort and boredom, but you know, at the other side of that, anytime I want to incorporate more running. I used to, during the pandemic, when everything closed down, I was doing a lot more outside stuff, going to the park and lifting, etc. Like doing calisthenics. I mean, but I started to run like 6 miles or this 4-mile hill run multiple times a week or every day if possible. And, you know, I just think there's no better feeling than like after a run. That gives me a feeling that I don't get after I like how I feel after I lift, but after a run is like, you know, the neurochemical release that you get, you know, from an exhausting run is tremendous.
You know what's crazy? And I've been doing this, man. I've been doing this kind of cardio since I was in my early 20s. Mm-hmm. And every time I'm done, I feel like accomplished. Seriously. Yeah. Every day.
It's a drug that doesn't go, because there's not like, I've taken many, many drugs in my life. And it's always like, you know, the first time you take a painkiller or something, you know, oh my God, that's the best thing that's ever happened to me, you know?
Yeah.
You're like, oh man, day 5, you know, after this tooth surgery or whatever, doesn't quite kick in as well. Or, you know, you substitute that in for almost anything versus when you're doing it yourself, you can get like the same result from the same input of exercise on a day-to-day basis. And that's pretty fucking cool from cardio, at least.
I had a couple questions for you that I heard you bring up. So, because I played college basketball and I heard you say you played college football, I was wondering what position you played, where you played, and like kind of what brought you to football and if you played any other sports.
Yeah, great question. I played football at a D3 school, Pomona College in Southern California, and I played defensive line. So pretty much over the course of 4 years, I played, you know, like nose guard, tackle, defensive end in varying capacities. And I was about, 225 my freshman year, and then got up to like 255 by my senior year. I think I peaked out at like 230 naturally before I started taking, steroids at like 18, after my first year though. But so like, and that's a regret for me, because I'm like, I would have liked to see, what I could do naturally, but I definitely really responded and gained a lot of weight quickly. It's just that really, wish I would have done more than, or started with lower doses or less compounds, because I did like DECA D-ball test,
Oh shit.
my first cycle way too much. And you just don't need it. And, but then also like, I never can know like what I would have hit, if I'd stayed natural till I'm 30 or something like that. But yes, I did play other sports, and, I almost played water polo because I swam too. So I started competitive swimming before my freshman year of high school, and I had two older guys on, like, one's on the water polo team, and I was on the competitive summer swim team with him, and he was like, "You're going to fucking play water polo or I'm going to beat your ass." And then my older neighbor was like, "You're going to play football or I'm going to beat your ass." And I literally did the math of like, okay, wait, my neighbor's closer to me, so he's closer to beat my ass if I don't do. But I was like intimidated by these guys, telling me I had to play these sports, and it did feel like a lot of pressure. Just because like if you're a large human, and I was probably like 6 feet tall, when I was a freshman, you want big bodies in these different sports, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely.
And then I also did wrestling, like junior and senior year. I did varsity wrestling and wrestled as high as heavyweight, when I was like, let's say 220, going against some real big guys. So that was fun. But seeing all those different training styles too, because there's a lot of like, swimming is such a hard workout. I used to dread swimming more than anything, because like wrestling's the hardest fucking workout. I'm like, no. It is very difficult, but they made it seem like you can't handle. And I'm always like, well, I'm the guy on the football team who's like pushing himself like on every sprint, whatever. Like, don't worry about me being not in shape on the football field. And I'm going both ways, playing every single play in every game. I'm not like out of shape for being in football, and wrestling is very tough in a different way. And they make you like do a long distance run, and then you come back and run sprints on the track, and then you do drills, and like you're in a hot room and stinky and sweaty, but there's like, it's just a different thing than swimming. It's just boring. You can't put headphones in. You got one person right in front of you, one person behind you. If you're too slow, the person's going to touch your foot, and like, then you have to go behind them, like this. I just remember being like, oh, I fucking hate this. And also because everyone else the best swimmers on a varsity team swim year round. So
yeah, if
I'm taking breaks to play football and then wrestle, I'm going to be out of, by the time it gets to swim season, they've been playing water polo or swimming with their year round team the entire year, and they're coming in shape. So I'm like the slowest person in practice, on the team, which I always hated, because it's like, it's like coming into fucking, you're playing D-line and you're 160 pounds and going against, a guy who's 270. It's like, this fucking sucks, Gotta gain some weight as quickly as possible. But yeah, I have an appreciation for all those different things, but I also know like after a swim workout, you feel tremendous. There's also having been in water, and you kind of like, or in the sun working out, and it makes you look good to like, oh man, I got this, at least the full body tans going,
I lived in Maui, like I was telling you the other day. And I mean, I am obsessed with being in water and like the ocean, but man, and as much as cardio as I fucking do, I get into that pool and start swimming. I swim a couple laps. I'm like, dude, fuck this. I don't want to do this. It's just, I do not want to do it. And people don't understand or realize just how hard swimming is. And like you see Michael Phelps, how he would eat 7,000-8,000 calories a day and be rail thin. I don't think people understand what you cut, how hard it is, how much effort it takes, and how draining it is on you.
Yeah. And as you said, he makes it look so easy when they do these, he does the 200-meter butterfly or something. Where it's like, if you've ever swum a lap of competitive butterfly, how it's like, I've finished 100 yards of butterfly before, where it's like my arms can barely move by the end of it.
Yes.
To do that again back to back, and him where he's just like, where each stroke is just effortless. It's, people don't have an appreciation for how fucking hard it is, or do like these longer distances. In high school, they did a 500, which is 20 laps. Yeah. Like a 5-minute swimming race, it's just, it's just a real battle of your will, and, to train for that. it's an amazing thing. That's just however many, because then you're talking about, it's like, it's difficult because you're out of shape as far as the lactic acid threshold of these particular muscles that you're using, but then also to not break down your form. You know what I mean? Like to have this perfect stroke every time as you're exhausted, as you're like, fuck this shit, you know?
And that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And and to see how fast, because like it's one thing to do just a regular like stroke, that freestyle stroke, that's hard enough.
Yeah.
But that fucking butterfly, to go and do it, and then do it that fast, because you know how it is on that when you got the double kick and the way he glides and swimmers glide, because I almost feel like you're not moving when you do the breaststroke or the butterfly. You know what I mean? You almost feel like, man, I'm barely moving here.
Yeah, the way that they make it, like, and I've studied too, because even I'd like to go back and try swimming again just to see if I could be like my high school times, because there's things that I realize now biomechanically that I'm like, oh, I should have like been shortening my breaststrokes, to like make it more like a butterfly. Like the best breaststrokers almost make it more like a butterfly. They're like doing like a shortened butterfly, so that they kind of get this, really like dolphin-like, body.
Yes.
Yes. But you don't have appreciation for it, because they're like usually in a heat of Olympic swimming, everyone's pretty close, but like, it's like you could take, here's the fastest, high school kid in the state of California. And then you put him next to an Olympian, and it's and then it almost like you need like three cheers. Like, this kid's the fastest, kid in his county. This is the fastest kid in the state. This is an Olympian. And like, you would watch the fastest kid in his county and be like, oh, he looks fast.
Yeah.
Appreciation for like, until you put him next to the other kid, and the other kid, it's like, holy shit. Like, because stroke is just like, he makes it look easy, but it's like, because of the fluidity of that stroke and the perfection of it, and how he's structured with his huge shoulders, and his hands and feet are probably just way bigger than mine. Everything just makes for these, like, every stroke he's getting a foot away from me.
Yes. Hey, you know what? And I don't want to change the subject because this is a good conversation, but tell everybody how you got the name Hella Mark Harley, and where, because I thought I saw you talk about it, but I want everybody else to hear about it.
Well, that's just from like growing up in Northern California. I'd never heard the term hella before, and I basically say I just moved from Southern California, and I lived across the street from the middle school I was about to go to, and I was like hanging out and like rollerblading there, and some skater came by and was like, dude, I just bought hella nugs. Like, he was telling me for some reason that I didn't know what the term hella or nugs mean. And so I was, you smoke weed? Dude, I just bought hella nugs. I'm like, huh? But the word hella stuck in my mind so much, because if you've heard the word, it might be hard to remember your first impression of it, but it sounded so weird. It was like, as an adjective or whatever, I just bought a lot of something, hella.
Right.
Because like, does that mean a hell of a lot of, like, what is it abbreviating? But it's just a very like sticky word. And I noticed that it hadn't reached like my area of Southern California with it, but it's definitely like a Northern California slang word. But I just heard everybody use it so much, that like it's very difficult not to repeat once you use it, like in slang terminology. And now I use it in a joking way. I'm like, oh, that's hella sick, dude. Because so I just,
it used to be a really, how terms go and everything. I mean, that was a long time term people used forever. I mean, it really was.
Yeah, because that was the mid 90s that I'm talking about. So I'm sure it'd be in the Bay Area for a long time before that already. But I just have this distinct memory of hearing it for the first time and then adding it onto my name. It sounded sing-song to me, I like the rhythm of saying Hella Mark Harley, and people will call me. Yeah, it kind of sticks in your brain. So people will call me like, "What's up, Hella?"
Yeah.
So easy to remember.
What's your and when we were talking, you said you did Northern and Southern California. Which I'm curious which one because I know which one I prefer, but which one do you like? I'm sure you like things about both probably, but which one did you enjoy being in more, or what do you prefer more?
I probably have more fond memories of Northern California because it feels more like home with my family, like my extended family. So it's a lot like I have a lot of associated holiday memories with my family in Northern California and growing up, like kind of becoming popular in high school happened in Northern California, or, having athletic success was in Northern California. I never tried to hate on Southern California because I feel like people hate on it so much already that they're like, oh, LA sucks. And then I'd press and I'm like, oh, you've been to LA once and you actually went to Anaheim and you actually don't know anything about LA. So we were talking about you've walked the walk of living in these different places in LA. I think LA has so much to offer and is often underrated by people. It's just like filled with a lot of people like me who moved there for entertainment opportunities. And so it's not like they picked this city out of so it's expensive, it's huge, it's difficult to navigate, it's frustrating. There's all sorts of different groups. It's hard to wrap your mind around even. I used to substitute teach when I first moved to LA. And it was crazy just being sent out to these places like that I'd never been to before for random assignments. Like, oh, I'm going to Northridge one day. I'm going to like the South Bay the next day. I'm going over to like La Cañada. I'm going over to Calabasas. I just got to see these different parts of LA that I would never have fucking driven to,
Right.
and just see how diverse it is and how big it is. And that, if you live in your neighborhood, if you live in Sherman Oaks, you live in Venice, you live in, Hollywood, you kind of just like, you're like, LA is this. And it's like, but LA is so many different kind of cities in one. But as far as natural, and also you go to the beach, you can go to Big Bear and snowboard on the same day. So many cool things about LA. But yeah, like as far as natural beauty in Marin County and the wine country where my grandma used to live growing up, it's kind of hard to be like the feeling of that for me. So what about
you? Well, so it's like this. There's obviously plenty to do in both. There's more to do in LA, like we both know. It's just, I prefer the climate north. I prefer that more Pacific Northwest climate. And I think it's definitely got more scenery and more beauty. When I was probably in my 20s, middle 20s, I probably would have preferred LA more because it's just like crazy, go, more clubs, more nightlife, more this. But the older I've gotten, that would be far less ideal for me. Now, the thing is, though, with the sports, because sports is like my whole life, right? So when you got so many college teams and sports teams that I love in LA, it's like that's where I want to go to do stuff. Yeah. But if I had to live, it would be 100% to 0%. I'd want to be northern than southern. And I like weed a lot. Northern California weed is as good as southern is. That's where all of the farms and everything are that I prefer. And I like the big trees, the redwoods way up north, because I've driven all through northern, like to the top.
Yeah, because that's another thing too. People only think of like Bay Area when they think Northern California, but really Northern California, there's a whole nother half of a state above San Francisco. So
San Francisco's not, it's northern, but it's really not, like you said. You got to understand what's really fucking north, right? And so
I said San Francisco, used to be a great city. I guess people, I don't go there much these days, but apparently a lot of shops are closed. Like obviously with the state of California, things aren't what they used to be. But San Francisco is one of America's great cities, or was at least. Sad to see what's happening, but my family has roots in San Francisco and have like this love for San Francisco that's been imparted on me. But yes, like as far as natural beauty, the redwoods and things that you see up the coast of Northern California are just like, holy shit,
It's amazing when you drive through it. The very first time that I went to San Francisco, because there were stigmas back then about San Francisco too, I thought it was the coolest ass city I had ever seen. And I was playing a lot of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, and San Fierro on there was structured just like San Francisco. And I was like, holy shit, this is the same. And, the ways the streets go straight up and down and all the row homes. And I went there the first time to go see the A's play, and I stayed in San Francisco instead of Oakland for obvious reasons. But I took my wife there. We went on a big shopping thing and went to the A's game and stuff in 2016 or 17, but we don't even want to go near there now because of all the crime and all of the way the city's gone downhill. So I really hope they get that under control and get it back to what it used to be.
Like, who's going to be the person to come in and turn it around,
I don't want to get too political, but there's got to be a lot of fucking changes made. I mean, there's got to be a lot
of thing. I talk about this with people because I talked about this with my girl recently, because there's this meme floating around that goes, one of the biggest turnoffs for women is that a guy likes the Joe Rogan podcast. And I'm like, but do you know any of Joe Rogan's opinions? And she's like, well, do you like anti-LGBTQ? And I'm like, well, what do you think his opinions on trans people is? And we work through the fact that I'm like, turns out you actually agree with him on
exactly
trans athletes competing in combat sports, or, Leah Thompson competing for the NCAA championship as a woman, et cetera. And the thing, I'm like, because that's now a mainstream opinion, because, Democrats have kind of marginalized people to a point where, in the mid 2000s, it was easy to say like, fuck the war in Iraq, and like, fuck if you're anti-pro, if you're anti-gay marriage. But now some of these positions that they've carved out, and specifically with regards to like being soft on crime, it's like you don't meet a lot of people who think that California is like doing the right thing with regards to major cities on crime, just like letting people steal, and kind of like making things softer for people who are, committing, again, like just shoplifting from stores, because you see now the destructive influence of that. They don't want to, it just attracts the wrong thing and pushes away the things that you want in your city to be a thriving.
The problem is they're glorifying this shit, making it sound okay. And the way that things are portrayed now, it's like, you can't have an opinion. You can't say anything. If you don't fucking agree, then you are just the most evil, low down piece of shit, that ever lived. And it's just like, look, there's compromise here on everything, but it's like, what the fuck did your morals go in your upbringing, and what the fuck planet do we live on? It's like, anarchy is not okay. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be a third world country. I want to stay a superpower.
Yeah.
And
free speech.
You studied history like all of us, right? I mean, like every other human.
Yeah.
So,
specifically, I majored in politics at Pomona, and so I think that those things intertwine. I've gotten more into history since graduating, and like I love certain things that there's so many, even to this like understanding Nazi Germany,
right.
Like it's one small thing, right? Or like World War II. It's like it's a topic of history. You can watch so many documentaries or to hear different angles, or like just the decision to do this thing, and what you could watch an hour on like, the decision to launch this attack at this time.
Right.
So it's this thing that I'm like, holy shit, there's so much to grasp out there, even of things that, you're kind of like introduced to in high school. Is like, and then World War II happened, and you spend a couple of weeks on that, and you're like,
right.
Where near even understand, like, even with like most people couldn't tell you the definition of fascism, including myself, like until somewhat recently, where you go, what is that? How does that differ from like left-wing authoritarianism, like, and how are they similar? And it's really interesting. So I love doing stuff like that and seeing how, like, because again, the history of Nazi Germany is really like, what were the circumstances that led to it? It wasn't random at all. You could replicate those circumstances where, Germany's made to pay war reparations, and they're like, all their men have been killed and they lost at war. And there's like you can get this insight into the national psyche that would have been drawn to with some dirty trickery, obviously, of his rise to politics, where he's literally using like brute force to kind of take over things without a majority. But
right.
It's all super interesting, and like the history of free speech, and kind of its link to authoritarianism. I think that's something that is always good to be wary of, because anytime people say like, I feel like I can't have an opinion, and I always want to be like, yes, like you don't have to like throw it around like, I can have my opinion. It's just seeing how people react to it. And I have before, because I've used the internet enough to be like, holy shit, I had no idea that, like, I thought this was a harmless thing. And secondly, that people don't want to engage in good faith debate. A lot of times they want to make you feel like a bad person for having an opinion. When that's kind of like, if you're just talking about persuasion, if you want to persuade people to your side, it's like the least effective way to do it is to shame people or virtue signal or tell you that you're inherently a bad person for having this stance on something,
Oh man. The way that we agree on this. And, there's a couple things that really bother me.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things is that we don't live in reality. And the reality is that every superpower in the history of time has fallen. Every single one has had bad leadership or dictatorship that has overwhelmed and got everything overthrown.
Yeah.
And our media and things paint this picture that is not reality, that people actually don't really believe and think, but they're scared to say.
Yeah.
And without people standing up and voicing it and standing up against it, we're kind of screwed in where we're at. And everything's become so polarizing. And I told my wife, and I was explaining to her, it's like, you know, the cartoons where they turn on the TV and then all of these things come on and like put you in a trance, you know, like the old Bugs Bunny things. That's like what has happened, but in reality of like this beating it into your head over and over that this is it, this is it, this is it. And it's like, people fall for this shit. And it's like, what the fuck happened to all of you? And where did your minds go here? I'm like, it's such confusion and hysteria that has been put into people's heads, and it's taken them out of reality of what really goes on.
Yeah. And I think one of the main things that you could probably track is, in a couple different metrics, is like trust in the mainstream media has plummeted. And I think for good reason, because specifically like over COVID, right? The COVID lockdown. And I just read, you know, it's so funny because like there's some friends that I have that are really liberal, and I consider myself heterodox, you know, like ask me about any of my stances on these things. They're not going to be totally, you know, I might think more left or more right on any varying topics. But with regards to COVID at the time, I didn't really think of much about it. I'm just like, yeah, this is happening. Like, let's just fucking settle down. Like it's what it is. Like that, like they've decided that the best thing to do is to lock everybody down. And the leading scientists have come to this conclusion that it's A, B, C, and D. And like fighting it isn't going to do much. You know, like I saw people like protesting against it. I'm like, you're spinning your wheels, because I was just like, this is the reality that we're living in. But I also had this trust for the mainstream media where I was like, why would they tell us that the vaccination is totally safe, or that it's going to be, or like that it came from a bat and China, like all these things that you've kind of seen debunked now, where you're like, the more I learn about this, and I thought some people were crazy, but again, reading RFK's book about Anthony Fauci and kind of seeing this guy who was portrayed to me as like a national hero because he was like the voice of reason against Trump. I'm like, dude, the LGBTQ community hated him in the 80s because he was fucking up all the AIDS vaccines. Like he was going for the hormone vaccine. Like, so if you really know about him, you're like, this is actually kind of a nefarious guy as far as like lining his pockets rather than looking out for the best interest of even the most marginalized communities. Like gay people in the 80s were fucking dying. And he's like recommending these vaccines that are going to, because if you get that big vaccine and patent it, that's when he really gets rich off of it. And I realize that there's this basic conflict of interest with how like he should not be profiting off any patent of a drug, right? That disincentivizes him for saying that anything that we have a generic on hand right now, and they've like, you know, these they go out through these these local clinic doctors would master the art of treating all the symptoms of AIDS. So with all these different things that are already generics, that's, you know, the movie Dallas Buyers Club comes from that approach, that legislation we have in America where you can't prescribe a generic for something that it's not used for, or insurance isn't going to cover you. I think that's how it is, where it's like, even though this thing would help this symptom, if it's not, like if you're prescribing it as a symptom of this disease rather than what it's actually for, you can't get it covered, however that works. But it's like, it's a fucked up system. And I think COVID just is an example of a thing that could have been treated so much better. And it's like, we got gaslit by the media, you know, where you're like, well, anyone who disagrees with this is like literally insane.
And it's just so wrong on so many fronts and levels. And the amount of flip-flopping that goes on. And I understand if you're going into the realm of the unknown or something that is new and you don't understand it, there's going to be some mistakes and some missteps. But when you can't take accountability, first of all, you can't call yourself a leader if you're never accountable and you're never wrong. I mean, I've never seen a fucking politician admit they were wrong. It's like they all think they're Jesus and that they've never made a mistake. To me, I have far, far, far more trust and respect to the person that can admit, okay, I made a mistake. This is how we're going to fix it. We misjudged this, or we had an error in, you know, some kind of data we had or something. But, and then when you have like with debates and things like that, all it is nonstop insults to one another, as opposed to, listen, this is where I agree and this is where I don't. But when you got people in front of you that you're supposed to be setting an example, and all they do is insult each other in front of people.
Yeah.
And you lie and lie and lie, and you get called out, and you still lie, and you lie more. It's just, and COVID's a prime example of the lies. You know?
And as you're saying, the accountability, because you could regain trust by admitting there's a lot of things that we got wrong during this period of time that in retrospect, because with the vaccine, for example, and again, I'm not anti-vaccine at all, but it seems like, this, specifically through RFK, who I also wouldn't even describe as anti-vaccine, he's just like skeptical of these very particular things that we put in there for purposes that he's like, this is not, like, the science doesn't back up the efficacy or the safety of this in the way that it's being presented to the world. That's really his stance. It's like, vaccines are being presented to you as 100% safe.
Right.
And therefore, that's being used to go, we can mandate them because it's like drinking water. It's like, you can't step in, and play sports unless you drink water. Okay, that sounds reasonable because you want kids to be hydrated. But then it's like, you can't go to work or go to school or whatever if you don't have a vaccine. That turns out, if you later find out, oops, yes, some people did have anything from it. If it did anything that you don't like as a human being, then we also find out that it really didn't kind of spread, help like stop the spread. Like there's all these things like, maybe. Yeah. It just wasn't what it was presented to be. And that really changed my mind. I'm like, oh my God, there was this universal agreement that this thing we're being told that you have to take is going to do X, Y, and Z. Then it doesn't, but there's no acknowledgement that forcing people to take it, because people like had their lives ruined over that.
I know. It's insane. And, you can't call anything 100% safe. You could fucking drown yourself drinking too much water. Vitamins can be toxic. Like all of these things that are good. So to call something 100% safe that has no years of testing on it, I've had tons of vaccines in my life, measles, mumps, all of this shit. But they've had years and years and years upon years, right? And I understand you have to rush a vaccine because there's a fucking crisis going on. I like everybody else, wanted it fast. But you can't come out and make these fucking claims like this and act like no issue or no possible scenario that could fuck you up.
Yeah, because then it becomes just this personal responsibility thing where I was never scared of it. But like, I had friends who were really, they were like worried about it, like they're like, I was reading it causes, these issues with an enlarged heart in some people. And I'm like, if that's even a 0.0001% chance that could happen, then you have to let the individual take on that risk. And we really just didn't do that. And then, even with reading this RFK book, I saw that there's a lot of vaccines that we're forced to take that, like, there is this schedule that you think is like, it is important and necessary. But then there's these other things where you're like, you're giving like a newborn baby these vaccines to diseases that just aren't an issue anymore, but it's to perpetuate these corporate patents. Like somebody's still getting rich off of these drugs that are being prescribed. So I feel like not enough people know that those two things are often in tension. The best interest of the human being and profit motive,
Absolutely.
You really trust that when you really shouldn't.
Well, and this is coming from me so one thing I'll tell you that I've done is I design supplements and I come up with formulas and I've sold them off to companies that buy the formulas from me, or, different products I've developed and sold. And one of the things that you always run into is, well, how many years of studies do you have on these? And I'll say, 10, 15 years. Well, that's not even close to enough for me to trust it. And, a lot of people that would discuss SARMs, for example. Well, some of the studies go back to the 90s on certain SARMs, some of the newer ones, obviously not, but, 10, 15 years of studies don't make people feel safe to use these things and take them. And it's a big kickback that I've dealt with, and understandably so. And I always say rightfully so. We don't have long-term studies on these things. And when people would ask me if I took the vaccine, I said, no, I did not. And it's not because I'm anti-vaccine. I've taken 1 million vaccines. You can't be an anti-vaxxer if you've taken a bunch of them and you don't want. So let me ask you this. If you like ice cream and you like 10 flavors, but then you don't like Rocky Road, are you fucking anti-ice cream because you don't like every flavor?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It's almost like being called during that time, it was like being called racist or something like that. Like you're immediately, you can just immediately dismiss everything that person has to say.
I mean, it's insane. Everything's this or this or this now. I mean, math is racist because something doesn't add up a certain way, or this study's racist because they use a certain color. It just doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever.
Yeah, those two terms even together, I'd love to see people use them more judiciously. Right?
Yes, it's the boy that cried wolf. You can't, then when there is racism going on, or there is this like misinformation going on, you don't believe it because it's the boy who cried wolf, right?
Yeah, and that's what we're seeing now. Like, because it's happened enough times with like the Me Too movement with like Marilyn Manson and Johnny Depp, where you kind of feel like there's this big media to do, and then it turns out it's kind of a hoax, and then like this Russell Brand stuff has been coming out. That's all these people are accusers, and he's kind of like, it's almost like he's the most believable guy. It's like, yeah, he's like a walking, talking sexual, assaulter.
I know.
And he's like, like what a scumbag is. But then people's immediate reaction to it is to be skeptical because like you've learned, that there's like often an ulterior motive, and because Russell Brand is somebody who's become this YouTube icon, and it's so hard to cancel people off. Once you get whatever 6 million subscribers on YouTube, it's like, he's just reaching so many more people than the mainstream media, like that any individual outlet does. That it's maybe there is or at least it allows people to entertain the idea that like if you're coming after him, it's because you don't like, what he's done, with his platform, and it's a threat to you. Even though it's like, yeah, he kind of like, he has this history, and there's so many different girls saying, he was an absolute, like, but he also talks about his sex addiction and drug addiction. It's not hard to believe, whereas like with Johnny Depp, it was like, oh, he suddenly became a wife beater when he was, like, interesting.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. But be skeptical, with everything. And also like with the SARMs thing, it's like, I learned about them mainly by just taking them on myself, and like, but I'm accepting that risk that it's like, I don't think an 8-week cycle of Ligandrol is going to kill me, but I saw that it worked, really well as a supplement, or a performance enhancer. So we know that they work, it's just whether or not you want to weigh the potential side effects.
And then I'll get into that with you a little bit. So background on me for you, I am kind of known for like being a SARMs guy.
Yeah.
I started actually studying and working with SARMs in 2011 before they were ever mainstream. There was really only 3 available. You could only get MK2866 S4 and MK677, and 677 was barely for sale. So you were kind of just the 2, What
does the first one do? Is that also a growth hormone secretagogue or not?
Say that again.
The first one that you mentioned, the MK2,
677.
Well, I know the MK677 is the growth hormone secretagogue, right?
Yes, correct. It's categorized with SARMs. It's grouped with SARMs. It's sold as SARMs. But if you break it down, so GW 501516, SR 9009, 9011, and GW 0742 and 677, they're not SARMs.
Yeah.
But they're sold and marketed with SARMs and group of SARMs because they're not really peptides. But like you said, 677 is a secretagogue. PPARs like GW and they're different structurally. Yes.
But I like, and I've used all those and I like them, but yes, I agree. It's like, if we're talking about an androgen receptor, I probably wouldn't.
Yeah.
But it fits under the category of things that are named with letters and numbers. So.
Exactly. So they essentially, like now, the newer developed ones like your S23, your LGD 3303, your YK11s, those are so strong and structurally they're just like this close to being a steroid.
Right.
Like
I took S23. I'm like, this feels like tren, Like,
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, you need S23 is a male contraceptive is what it's called because it shuts you down so bad. The good thing about it though is the recovery on it is far, quicker than a steroid would be.
Yeah.
But those should be treated just like steroids in terms of PCTs and the severity of the possible side effects. And one of the things that you brought up earlier, which was a big point, when you said that even if 0.00001% had a heart problem with the vaccine, you got to note that, right?
Yeah.
So with SARMs, it's like they don't convert to estrogen, but I've seen certain cases where people have said it irritated, gave them gynecomastia or whatever the case may be. So you got to report that, even if it's not
and maybe
structurally.
Because I know, like, like prolactin's a big pathway that I've gotten gyno symptoms without any test, because if you take alone or a NOR19 derivative, then you can get it from that. Or even I've gotten gyno symptoms from smoking too much weed when I wasn't doing anything steroid wise, and that's a real thing.
Yeah.
Israel Adesanya suddenly get like a man boob on one of his sides, but it's like he doesn't look like he takes steroids to me, but it's very believable that he smokes weed. I think he even talks about it. So not enough people talk about the fact that seems to be a legit pathway. But yeah, you gotta note it nonetheless.
Yes, absolutely.
It's totally safe. I think like SARMs are very effective. It's just that it's gotten into the mainstream ideology, at least amongst the younger generation, that I can take Rad 140 and not do a PCT. And it's like, oh boy. You really do need to, because you're going to fuck yourself up. Whatever progress you make on that 8-week cycle is going to be, you're going to go back to zero and then lose,
That's such a fucking good point. And that's the thing. Some of these SARMs, I hate to say this because you could eventually recover, but feasibly, if you understand and grasp, if you don't do a PCT, even if in 10 weeks you recover your numbers, you're going to lose everything that you did. You're probably going to go further backwards, and you're still never going to fully recover properly. You're just not.
Yeah.
And they might be mildly suppressive, but I don't give a shit. Why would you even risk it?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in, once you make or at least now that I'm committed to taking the anabolics, even if I'm just, I'll go down to a cruise dose of testosterone, but I'm always trying to do PCT at least a couple times a year. Even if I feel like I don't need it, it's just important, because I've made that mistake before. I remember taking a cycle of just Winstrol, and I probably knew that I should have taken PCT. I just didn't have it on hand. I was I'm just going to take this because I have it on hand and I'm 19. And the results were great. It's funny because just a 6-week cycle of Winstrol with my diet and training locked in, I looked great. I know I've seen your, steroids that make you look good naked. And I think Winstrol is definitely one of them. Yes, holy shit, this really does work for hardening and strength. But then afterwards, I got soft again, and I didn't feel like training. So I was suppressed, and then not driven to work out. And there's all this cascade, and then you're emotional, all these things can happen afterwards that are just, sort of the opposite of what you're going for when you put a male steroid in your body.
100%. And what you just said with orals, especially, they're far more suppressive than people credit them for. But when you run an oral and you tax the shit out of your liver on top of being highly suppressed, it's going to make you so lethargic and not want to do anything at all. I mean, I don't think people, I did a video once, and I actually have a press release on this video because it was so big, is Anavar really that fucking mild? I didn't say fucking in the title, but you know what I mean?
Known for that, whatever that means. And it's but what does that mean? Because I'm always the person that's going to be what do you mean by mild? Do you mean it's right organs? Do you mean it's mild with the results? Do you mean it's mild on the side effects? Do you mean it's mild on your, HBTA? There's so many ways to break down that question. And just because girls take it, I guess people go well, it's mild. It's but is that true?
Right. It's still a fucking steroid. It's mild in comparison to an Anadrol or a halotestin or a Tren, but it's still a steroid, and it's still got all the steroid side effects, just not to the higher extent of others, right? And so for females, it's more acceptable because chances of virilization and things like that are pretty low. It's not impossible, but it's pretty low. But people don't. Part of the problem with steroid use in general is 95% of the people using them don't know how to use them. And I'm not going to sit up here and say that there's not side effects. They're not going to hurt you, and they're not good for that. They're good for you because they're not. But you can mitigate so much of the stigma and shit that goes on if you just do it right.
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny how a lot of people will do orals or be can I just kind of stay on Anavar as long as I want? I'm but they're doing it because they're scared of needles. Yeah. subject like test or something. Cause it's like, I tell people, I'm like, doing a small dose of test year round seems to be pretty safe, and, but they're like, yeah, but I don't want to, I'm like, oh, you don't want to put an insulin syringe in your fucking, the side of your glute, like grow the fuck up. Then you're not ready for that.
I hear you. When I moved to Vegas, and I've coached thousands of clients at this point, and I met this girl. I was actually going to get Botox, and I was talking to her in the lobby, and she realized who I was. And she said she had been on Anavar for 3 fucking years. 3 years. And she had no sex drive, had no, one thing that women don't understand that you and I will understand is that just like men need estrogen, even though it's low, women need testosterone, even though it's low.
Yeah.
She had nothing. And I mean nothing. And she was royally, I was tasked with like an impossible task trying to fix her.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a mess.
And so what do you do in that situation?
Oh, there's so much trial and error you got to do. Like, you got to be careful giving a woman too much testosterone. So it's like, try some natural test boosters, then try a little bit of low dose of this, use some HCG, even though I hate HCG. Like, I had to try so many different things to get things, and then blood panels are so screwed up because liver's off the chart, kidneys are bad, cholesterol's not good. It's like, it was looking at this like, well, it was almost like tasked with building a fucking Vegas hotel or something. You know what I mean? It's like, whoa, I don't.
Yeah.
It's
also,
years.
That's not an area of expertise for me. So girls will ask me advice. I'm like, if my knowledge of guy stuff is like this, girl stuff is like, I know that girls take Anavar and Primo at kind of generally speaking this dose. But outside of that, I'm like, I just made me realize I don't even know what I'd say for what is a PCT for a girl, I just couldn't tell them and I don't feel comfortable. I'm like, I'm going to point you towards some resources, but, I can't really begin to conceptualize or even empathize with like, what does it feel like, to be a girl and then be a girl whose hormones are altered?
I'll be honest with you. And I tell women this because I coach a ton of women. You'd be surprised how many I actually get because they don't post online and they're very kind of quiet about use.
Yeah.
But I'm not a fan of women using any steroid, like none, zero. Yeah. I prefer them to use SARMs, peptides, like things like that. Mm-hmm. To me, the only ones that I have any sort of comfort in, and I really don't, is Anavar and like oral Primo.
Yeah.
Maybe very low Winstrol, but then again, I hate that too. Yeah. But I get women that want to run DECA, and I'm like, oh fuck, what the fuck, like. No, and like hardcore shit, and it's just they just don't get it until it's too late because some of that stuff's irreversible.
Right? Yeah, because I was gonna say like you're a guy who's been modeling and acting and like you've kept your good looks and hairline and stuff like that, and so I'm sure that's something that you took some preventative measures for. But with women, it's like. In guys, I think your face does get altered a little bit by androgen use. It's not as extreme, and you'd have to maybe take more, and then the dieting and all these different factors of like bodybuilding. But some women, you're like your face is not going to go back to looking feminine at all.
No.
There's more room to like alter with a woman, putting in sex drive, hormones.
It's honestly scary, and like I said, some of it's irreversible, some of it can go away, but that's hit and miss too, depending on the woman. So Let me ask you a question. In terms of your diet, what kind of like, because I'm assuming you're probably 230, 240 right now?
At my biggest this year, I've been like 260. I'd have to weigh myself now because I just got back from vacation, so like I wasn't, and also like I had like an injury during the thing where I wasn't even training. So it's kind of like, fuck it. I'm just not going to think about this for a little bit. But if I want to get down to 230, then I would probably eat, like a 26 or 2,700 calorie a day diet with like, I really like doing body recomposition diets that you don't have to do forever, but
right.
I like keeping my protein really high and carbs moderate. Even if I'm doing a lot of exercise, I usually feel fine. So I've personally gotten great results off like keto diets, or like a diet that I follow that I made is like 50% protein, it's like 2,700 calories, and it's 50% protein, let's say 30% carbs, 20% fat. And that definitely works for me. I've experimented less with like stricter like bulking diets and stuff like that. I just like traditionally have just, try to eat a lot of protein and a lot of carbs, and, it's worked pretty well. But like lean bulking, I'm not a big expert in. But I would just say another thing is like abdominal distension when I'm doing stuff like a keto diet. Like I just feel like my waist is a lot slimmer,
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what causes, me to have a bigger belly when I do, or what foods, cause the most inflammation. Cause I'd have to like, I have a guess, I'm sure it's like
Yes.
rice or bread or some, some element of the carbs and, any stuff that I'm eating that's processed in any way. But like, it's amazing how lean you can look when you and come out of intermittent fasting too. There's all these different things where it really has, keeping a slim waist, if you're a bigger guy, can make a dramatic difference in how you look. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I think there's more than one way to skin a cat. I've never been like a huge advocate of being like, you have to do like keto is the only way, but most guys can benefit from intermittent fasting, I think, because like I had separate my brain from the notion that like being hungry was a bad thing. When I'm trying to always gain weight for football, I was like scared to be hungry. And so I had to kind of unravel that conditioning that I'd done to myself, trying to always put on weight and be comfortable working out while fasted.
Right.
So what about you?
I have trouble with intermittent fasting because of the excessive cardio, and I can't.
Yeah.
It's too much for me. But it's funny because we kind of share a similar. I've always been more higher protein, moderate carb, lower fat, but I've realized over time that my fat has been too low. Like I wasn't getting enough.
Yeah.
And part of that's like body dysmorphia for me from modeling. And I've always kind of been so worried about gaining too much weight. And that's my own personal demon that I deal with. But,
yeah, because whatever you're pursuing at that time, it's like I could have, had I not played football, I remember thinking about like, maybe I'll go into modeling if I go to UC Santa Barbara, they don't have a football team, I can just drop the football thing and not have to worry about, so like I envisioned this alternate life, which would have given me, alternate obsessions about my body.
I honestly am one of those regimented guys where I eat the same thing at the same time every fucking day, 7 days a week. I don't really eat out. I do about 10 to 12 servings of vegetables a day. I do, 6 to 8 egg whites or 2 or 3 whole eggs. I do oats. I do sweet potatoes, a lot of Greek yogurts and strawberries, different berries and things like that. I had a calcium score done recently, and they found plaque in my arteries, and it's a genetic thing.
Yeah.
And so it's really scared the fucking shit out of me because it's like, I'm 41 years old. I do everything perfectly. I don't drink anymore. Drug use was very, in my 20s, but it was minimal to just, weed and cocaine, nothing more.
Yeah.
Not like a lot of cocaine either. Steroid use was 4 to 5 years. So it doesn't make sense to have. So I've realized like I don't eat enough fats. So I've incorporated more walnuts, nuts into my diet, the sweet, different types of things. But it's like fish, and I hate salmon, but I'm choking it down. But, I think I've underate, and it hasn't helped. And so I'm trying to up the calories a little bit and get more, because I don't even eat 2,000 calories in a day, and I probably burn fucking 3,500,
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to hear that, and I think those are all great building blocks for like, if your diet is like animal protein, fruits and vegetables, and nuts, like if you're covering your carb needs and your fat needs and your protein needs from those 3 sources as the foundation, like it's hard, like you'd have to give me a pretty good reason to not suggest that to somebody, like, oh, they're allergic to beef or something, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Some big thing where like, oh, this whole class of foods can't be eaten. But like starting there, I know personally, I've always felt good when I'm kind of maxing out like my fruits and vegetables per day, my animal proteins per day, and having healthy fats every day. Like it just, you're going to have
what kind of healthy fats do you incorporate into your diet?
Well, I eat egg yolks. So I don't know if those are considered healthy fats or not, but I know like,
yeah, they are.
Yeah. Because they've got a bad rap for a long time, but I'm like, I just have always, when I'm bulking, I'll eat more eggs, but I always at least have a couple, in an egg white scramble that I do. But I've loved almonds over the years. I've just always eaten them, and I'm not sure, and more recently, like pine nuts, and then like flax seeds, and the different like hemp seed, chia seed, flax seed I've incorporated more because I read some good stuff on it that it's funny how you see these things. It's like chia seed oatmeal, like that would turn me off just how it sounds. It's like what, a fucking chia pet, this is going to sprout in my stomach. But then you read up on the benefits of it and what it can do for like certain types of fat, and vitamins are better for hypertrophy. And you're like, oh, this is like a real thing that if you incorporate the right kinds of fats versus your lower quality fats, it can have an effect on, your muscle, your hair, all these different things, how you carry body fat and store body fat. So that's really interesting.
I like almond butter and peanut butter quite a bit too. I put on my oatmeal every night, and I do raisins, and I've had a thing with lower potassium because of the amount of sweat, and I sit in the sauna. I have a sauna at home. I sweat. When I do cardio, brother, I get on there and I come off and I'm 3 to 4 pounds lighter than when I started from all the sweat.
It's amazing.
And the electrolytes fucking deplete when you do that. So I started to do like the dried apricots, dried fruits, and things to get more potassium. And because there's certain things I just don't like and to eat. And so it was a fine line. And you got to monitor your electrolytes, your blood work, and all of this shit because it can be off.
Yeah. Especially when you're doing all that cardio. I think that's a big thing. Like, because Gatorade has become this mainstream thing when people just drink it as a beverage. And I'm like, that was designed for people playing like football in the heat, right? And I can definitely say that, like, when you're doing triple days or something, and you just have to you have to get that shit in as quickly as possible to avoid like, a health emergency, then you want to be drinking Gatorade. But otherwise it's like, well, what about fruit, fruit and vegetables. So
I think too, people don't understand electrolytes. There's like nothing in Gatorade. Like, I think that people need to understand and realize there's more to electrolytes. It's magnesium, it's sodium, it's chloride, it's potassium, and you need a fucking substantial amount, not 2% of your daily value in a Gatorade.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's interesting. Because I didn't even realize it was like such a low percentage of your daily values.
Yeah, there's not much in there, and there's so much sugar in there that totally compromises what you're actually getting. I actually drink an electrolyte mix that I use because I know people don't like them, but I do still do the EAAs and the BCAAs because there's a lot of extra added benefit to those that the bros don't realize when they talk shit about them.
I still take them because I think enough like credible people, have recommended them to me.
Well, yes, absolutely. And so one of the things is the leucine is the building block to the recovery, right? That you take in with the BCAA. And people that drink whey protein don't realize that the reason that the whey helps you is the fucking leucine in the whey that helps you recover after your workout. Yeah. And if you don't want the extra calories and you're getting plenty of protein, you don't need the protein drink. You need the leucine.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's again, even just thinking of in terms of supplements, like this is something that if you're getting it from a natural source, you don't need to supplement it. It's not just, supplements are supplements for a reason because you feel like you're not getting enough of that from an outside source, so don't be reliant on it. Like, people will kids I just always know will be like, protein is the crucial thing. Like, get the protein shake. And it's like, well, or you could just get it from a natural source. And if you feel like you can't, or the easiest way to get it is from a shake, then do that. But, I think it's kind of looked down upon, if you're just getting your protein from shakes. I think the most credible people I know would recommend, like, try more natural sources of food, animal sources,
I agree. I don't have anything against protein shakes, but just like you just said, understand what the definition of supplement is. It's supplemental. It's to help you to something that you might be missing. It's not supposed to just replace everything.
Yeah.
It's still like not even remotely close to the same. I put a scoop in my oatmeal at night, and I put some in my yogurt, and that's just for extra for me. But I don't sit there and slam shakes all day or anything like that at all.
Yeah. Even though it's kind of like, it's like it was in my conscience that, like, the more protein shakes I eat in a day, the better. Right? Like every time I need, I don't know, like a snack or whatever. But it can be very convenient. I've often like getting Premier protein shakes that are pre-made from Costco, because it's like, if you're doing anything on the run, like that's the biggest help you can give to somebody who kind of is like, if you're not able to like cook for yourself all day or have meals on hand, like get this box of protein shakes and just slam them, at every time you're having a snack, and that's going to be a big step towards, like not craving bullshit.
I agree. But my mom and dad got me the Joe Weider, all in the shakes that were pre-made when I was in 8th grade. And I used to love the way those fucking things tasted, man. The pre-made ones, they do taste good. You got to try to avoid the ones that have the carrageenan in them. It's not really good for you, but they don't tend to put that in many of them anymore.
Interesting. I haven't heard of that. Is that a bad, like, is that a gum kind of thing?
Yeah, it's like one of those additives that keeps it stable, the way that it is, but it's not good for you. A lot of them stop putting it in there, but you should look for that in there. It'll say carrageenan on it, and you really want to avoid the ones that have that in there. Because I used to drink the Pure Pro 50s, the ones with the 50 grams of protein in them.
Yeah.
Until I realized that shit was in there, and I stopped drinking them, because on paper they look great in terms of the makeup on there, but you always got to look in depth at the ingredients on there, because there's additives in there you don't want to take in too much of internally.
Yeah. There's a lot of, even in the past couple of years, just reading about like, oils,
Yes.
right? That's a big kind of meme online, but you look into it and you're like, oh, these things really aren't meant for human consumption. We use them and stuff like that. And, but at the same time, if you go to the store, I saw somebody make a post yesterday. They're like, I'm going to go in Trader Joe's and try to get something pumpkin spiced. But my two no-nos are no weird gum, like xanthan gum or something like that, and no seed oils. And the only things she could get were like pumpkin spice and like something else. But it was like everything that was being sold that was like bake it, or it's a cookie, or it's a bread, or it's whatever, had one of those things in it. So it's in so many foods, even to these places that are like supposed to be kind of healthy,
Oh yeah. Hydrogenated oils, those things, they're in so many things. And that's, once again, to keep things like regular peanut butter keeps it stable. When I go get peanut butter and almond butter now, I go straight to the fucking machine and grind my own.
Interesting.
Yeah. You can go, I walk right in, you go up to one of the machines, you push the buttons, and the almond, like the almonds are in there for the almond butter, and it just comes right out, and there's nothing in them but almonds, no salt, no nothing.
Wow. I've never even, I didn't realize that was a thing. So what store are we talking about that does this?
I do that at Fresh Time, or they do it at Whole Foods does it. Even like here, it's called Hy-Vee. Where you're at, it'd be like Safeway, Vaughn's, or one of those, Ralph's probably in California. But a lot of them will have that. Some of them won't. But then when you go in and buy a natural peanut butter, you got to stir it, and it's got the fucking oil in it.
Natural peanut butter seems so much different than the stuff you buy from most stores or the most famous brands, that it's like, what is the difference? This seems drastically different.
I'm not a fan of that stirring. It's messy, and it's like annoying, and it's difficult.
Yeah, it's mainly just annoying, right?
So that's why when you
get a cord real quick to charge my computer. 1 second.
Yeah, go for it. I hate when the charging goes out. I have been there. Everybody, make sure to check Mark out. Check out his Instagram. He's got a ton of followers. He's got great shorts and videos out there. Extremely entertaining guy that you guys should definitely go check out and watch. He's got a ton of content, ton of cool pictures, ton of cool interactions that you guys would really, really enjoy watching. So I would definitely go check all of those things out about him, because super, super intriguing guy. Tons of accomplishments and things that you'll definitely want to see as well. So make sure to check him out, subscribe to everything he's got going on. All good, brother? We're over here talking shit as soon as you got up. So the peanut butter that you actually go grind yourself, it doesn't get all the oil and everything. And what if you do go buy the natural peanut butters in the jars that have the oil on them, you're supposed to, when you put them in your cupboard or wherever you store it, turn it upside down. And that way it'll help to kind of separate it and get the oil more mixed throughout after you've stirred it, and always keep it turned upside down.
That's a great tip. I guess because the oil is always like on top, and it's like, this is just, it's weird if you're not in a routine, and it just doesn't feel like the consistency that you want to put on bread unless it's like colder or whatever. But you're gonna have to check that out. And I don't know, but to the beginner, my advocacy is always like, figure out a diet that you can stick to.
Yes.
That'll put you in a deficit, because most guys are coming to me, they're like, I want to lose weight, and it's like, more so than specific food selections, which can come later. You can optimize your diet in every way. And I can tell you the best thing to do is eat this, but it's like a lot of people go out and buy fresh vegetables and fruits and just let them rot because they don't, they don't eat them. So it's like, first and foremost, you want to see the fact that if you eat in a deficit, it's really the most important thing, and then you kind of add layers on top of that of optimizing, because you're playing 4D chess over here, mentally, because you've been doing it for so long, but you realize that most people's needs are like, how do I eat in a deficit?
I know. Here's a trick. This is how I snack throughout the day. This will blow your mind that I actually do this. Every single day. My wife she'll take 8 peppers, green. I like green alone, but sometimes we'll mix them with, orange, yellow, 2 zucchinis whole, a box of mushrooms, and an onion. And she makes it all every single day. And I have bowls in the refrigerator, and I go snack on them throughout the day. And that's the way I kind of get through the day, because it's a healthy carb, and you can eat an abundance of vegetables. I mean, all day long. Right. So I probably get 300 to 400 calories. Huh?
Are those raw?
Well, she cooks them.
Okay. No, that's I think that's great, because again, you're talking about, it's almost like snacking for us. It's like, it's not that you might need the calories, but a lot of people, it's just like an activity. Like,
I know.
They're like bored and they want something, they just want to like move their mouth. It's like chewing gum,
Exactly.
Like, we're not hungry for gum. We just want to put something in our mouth and chew. And I think the best thing you can do, is like a vegetable that you don't hate.
Yes.
Peppers are better than most things, or, a mushroom that tastes good. It's better than most.
Absolutely. And I look for the ones with the most antioxidants and the most heart health, and the ones I enjoy. And sometimes I take a little scoop of peanut butter and put it on there and eat it with it together to get the peanut butter in, because I love peanut butter and almond butter. But you got to just figure out ways to make things good. Like, I, for one, have learned how to make things good that most people don't like,
Yeah. And it's usually not like, I remember somebody would joke about this. I mean, I think we've seen enough. There's like a clip of Rich Piana out there. He's like, just eat my fucking egg whites, no salt, no seasoning, no nothing. It's like, it's almost like bodybuilders have this desire to punish themselves. And it's like, you can add a little barbecue sauce. Like, look up some of these things that are like, doesn't even need to be sugar-free. Like, there's this Stubbs barbecue that's like 30 calories a tablespoon. It's like, if you can't spare 30 calories and it's going to change the taste of this whole meal, whatever meat, rice and vegetables you put, like barbecue sauce with a strong flavor that you like, is going to alter that meal. And there's so many flavors out there that have very little calories but totally alter the flavor. And your desire to eat these things, because egg whites on their own without any salt even,
It's rough.
Any other seasoning, like, it's kind of gross, maybe, day in and day out, unless you're like, but I also agree, like, I love to, if possibly, the same things every day, because you just turn that switch off. And then, ironically, a lot of people think they'll get bored by it, but like, if you find something that you like, I often find that the same thing tastes good if I like it. I remember I used to get up and work out in the morning and come back and have oatmeal with fruit in it and like some artificial sweetener. It was like every single day. It was like, oh my God, this is so good. Because you're not eating shit though. If you're eating candy at night and fucking your taste buds up, then they're going to be recalibrated to the plainness of the oatmeal. But like, like the hit of neurochemicals that you get from the exercise every day, I think it's something that is actually, people don't realize that it's pretty stable, if you're
Thoroughly.
like overstimulated, it's like with all things, caffeine's not going to feel like much if you're doing Coke all the time,
That's a fact.
Yeah. Um, so, if you're eating super high sugar, if you're eating a bunch of chocolate and ice cream and all that shit, it's like, yeah, the protein bar, the protein shake, the vegetable, the oatmeal is going to taste like shit. But if you remove those things, I believe that a balanced bar can taste as good as a fucking candy bar, to your palate.
Oh yeah. My Quest bar is like the one treat that I have every day. I eat it right before I start working out. When I get to the gym, after I've done cardio at home, I tend to like to go lift right away.
Yeah.
I don't like to spread it out too much. And so I take off, and that's what I eat an apple and a protein bar before I go in there. And that's like the treat. And it's fucking good if you don't eat a bunch of bullshit. You don't know the difference, right? So it's a major treat. So, but I'm with you, like, do you feel like when you start eating something every day and you love it and then you don't, it's like, fuck, I missed that, like,
very simple things. Like, again, I use it's had certain shakes that I've made, like a Cinnabon shake where it's like kind of like cinnamon toast protein mixed with like oats and, a couple different things put in there to make it just whatever flavor. I'm like, that's fucking good. Then I'm like, I could eat that for a long time and still feel like that's really good. And, you might even go out to eat and be like, I'd rather be home eating the thing that I know how it tastes.
Yes.
Exactly how full I'm going to be from it,
Oh yeah. No, I totally get it, man. And what we were both talking about, and I did have a question for you too, but diet is so subjective, and you have to try new things. And as you get older, things change. And as your body changes, different foods affect you differently. But I did want to ask you on terms of keto, because I find that keto is very effective, but I don't find it to be super sustainable to stay on for super long periods of time, starving your body of carbs. When you use keto or do keto, how long do you normally stay on it? And do you ever tend to, at a certain point, kind of not feel so good? What's your experience with it? Because everybody's got a different one.
Yeah. So I know that personally, I probably did it for like a year when I did it. Like, I don't have extensive experience with it. I just remember like trying it, and I did like 2 meals where the first one was like a food-based one with, and I probably wouldn't eat until like, I always after my workout in the morning, and I was doing lifting and cardio most days. So it was also like really hitting the gym and the cardio element of it. But I would do a meal of like a steak, bacon, eggs, spinach, broccoli, avocado, kind of, and maybe saute the spinach and broccoli and some of the animal fat. And that's like a, 1,500 calorie fucking.
That's a big one.
15 to 1,800 calories. Yeah, but it's like the meal of the day. And eating all the meat and the fats from the avocado made me full for like most of the day. And then at the end of the eating window, I'd do like a protein shake with like fats and almonds and peanut butter or something like that.
Yeah.
And maybe like a small bit of blueberries or something like that would like keep me under the limit of carbs. So it like, but I know I napped a lot during that time, and I'm not sure because I was like lifting so hard and doing cardio every day, but like, I know I was like, rest wasn't an issue because I was getting good sleep at night, and also like, would take a nap, so, but could that have been it? Could that have like, am I not eating enough carbs? And is that what, but yeah, it'll be interesting to like look back and because it's kind of a new fad. Is this something that's sustainable? Like if you're going on carnivore or keto, are you just like, I think just as a food elimination diet, but then it's like, what if you figured out the foods that really fuck with you or make you feel tired or bloat your gut or all these things, if you took those out, would you feel better if you added in better carbs?
Right. And that's once again, trial and error, right? I mean, you gotta figure it out.
But
so
things are, like fruits or sweet potatoes or whatever, or even regular potatoes. If you eat a regular potato and don't doctor it up a lot, how filling that is, like just a regular baked potato.
I just started eating sweet potatoes recently, bro, and I can't tell you how filling just one is. It's insane. It's really crazy.
Yeah, I don't like the skin too now, whereas I used to not. But if it's like baked, I'll definitely just eat the whole damn thing. And it's hard to like over if you limit your foods to certain things like that. It's really easy to overeat carbs and fats when you're eating candy, but it's hard to
Right.
overeat on regular or sweet potatoes by too much. You know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I don't know why I just never really ate sweet potatoes, and then we started to have the purple ones, and then I just kind of do the Japanese ones now, and oh man, because they're so good for you and so filling, it's
Yeah,
insane. And if you
yeah,
don't like the taste, you can mash them up, and I mash them up in vegetables and eat them like that. And I like chives and parsley a lot, and put those on like my eggs, and I cut green onions on things, and
yeah,
that goes to what you were saying about egg whites. If you put like things like that, parsley, chives, basil, things like that, you can make them pretty fucking good. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. With zero caloric cost, it's amazing what you can do. And everybody has
exactly.
a particular thing that they like, but like if you have a fucking spice that you like, why not use it all day?
Well, yeah, you don't have to get a spice that's full of sodium. There's plenty that are not filled with a bunch of salt and sodium in them if you just look.
Yeah,
And you can cut fresh, like I cut fresh green onions on mine. I like to cut tomatoes and things and put them on the top. I cook tomatoes in my egg whites, like the little cherry ones. We cut them up and cook them on the stove and
yeah,
things like that. And you have to get creative and try some shit, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. But all those, if you're not experienced, don't tell me egg whites are gross, but you've never, whatever. Put Tabasco sauce on them because that's one thing where I know it makes it exciting, and also I just saw this video on how spice tolerance um, can affect your overall pain tolerance. Um, like that if you have an increased sort of tolerance for really spicy foods like that. This I forget what the guy's name is. I know I'm going to feel bad for not remembering because he's one of the more famous guys giving out like information on YouTube right now about you know uh, health and stuff like that. But um, I'm blanking. But in other words, like spice is good for you. Increasing your
Yeah.
spice is good for you. Um,
I like the crushed red pepper. I can't do spice a lot, but I do crushed red pepper on things and stuff. And cinnamon's another good one if you can put it on some stuff. Don't overdo it because it can be toxic, but that's a good one for your health and overall makes shit taste great. I put it on top of oatmeal sometimes with raisins, and oh fuck, it's
yeah,
good. It's
yeah,
really good.
yeah. It's a powerful, very powerful spice. Um,
And then when you were talking about the quinoa and things like that and the chia seeds, those are so good for you. And I buy the oatmeal that already has that in there, that's already in them.
really,
They do it at Trader Joe's, and Pure Elizabeth sells it like that. It's fucking good. It really is. And it's
yeah,
great for you.
yeah. No, yeah, and like again, because all these are some things seem like I'm turned off by some things that seem like fats, but then you look into the science of them and you're like, oh, it is really, it's going to be good for your hypertrophy goals, even, to have the right
Yes.
fats.
There's
So
a stigma on fats, and I'm like you. I've always been turned off by them, and I can't. And even though I'm a certified fucking dietitian and I tell people to eat them, I hadn't been. And I started doing it now, and I feel like 1,000,000% better. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like
yeah,
throughout the day. And I can tell. And I'm still not eating enough of them by any stretch of the imagination, but man, it makes a difference. Fuck.
yeah. And what is one of the main differences you feel, like energy levels or just feeling full or
I feel several things. One, definitely the energy and like the more liveliness. But I feel like it's helped my skin, even though I take such good care of my skin. But like being more like sharp, you know what I mean, throughout the day, where it's like I'm not wandering off in my thoughts, or like I'm just really fucking dialed in all day long.
yeah,
Whereas it took weed to get me to really dial in at night when I really type my best and do my best videos. Now it's like all day long. Even if I'm tired, I didn't sleep enough.
yeah.
So yeah,
That's very
weed's my ultra focus thing, man.
well, that's interesting. Do you use it mainly at night or
Yeah.
well, yeah,
Yeah. I don't smoke at all during the day. When I really want to dial in and start typing like something intricate or record some really in-depth videos, if I've smoked a little bit, like my my mind goes into the place it needs to go, where for some people it takes them the wrong way. Mine is the right way, you know?
No, for sure. When it comes to like the inner monologue, I can definitely turn that on with weed. And I'm also like you, where I never got the day smoking thing, because I'm like, that's just a way for me to like fuck up my whole day and not get the things done. But if I do what I need to do during the day and function, you know, in a sober way, then at night it just feels like, yeah, I can unlock something that also transitions nicely into sleeping, you know, and dreaming.
It's like anything else, you know, you can overdo something and it's not good for you if you use it the right way and you use it moderately to your advantage, as opposed to being like a burnout, you know, like a wake and baker or fucking that shit. That's not the right kind of use. That's problematic use, you know?
Yes. Yeah. And you can really, like I had a friend who was smoking all day, every day for years and years and years, like really potent, like waxes and concentrates. And he finally was like forced to quit, you know, he was going through a breakup, and like his wife was kind of like, you know, A, B, and C things are wrong. And like, he's like, in a desperate attempt to fix these things, he's like, okay, I'll quit smoking weed. But he described the withdrawals as like almost going through like a heroin withdrawal, because, you know, it does affect like your, you know, adrenal receptors, you know, like your norepinephrine receptors. So it's like you can burn these things out that are the excitatory response that you have to like a sativa or something is, you know, but there's something going on that like, yeah, I've always found like it does alter you for the next day potentially. Like, you know, I kind of remember being like the next day I kind of feel a little bit different, maybe if I smoked a lot of weed or whatever, but anything that's going to change your like resistance to something is doing something to your brain. So yeah, it's often billed as this like there's no consequence to it, you know, no matter how much you smoke. But yeah, for me, if you keep it at that level, then a little bit will still go a long way, you know.
Totally agree, 100%. Totally.
You can get high if you're smoking all day, you know.
Yeah. I don't know. The times that I've smoked all day, it's just like I feel like my day is just wasted, to be honest with you. And I'm a huge marijuana advocate for a variety of reasons, but I'm not an advocate of abusing anything.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I keep it, you know. Yeah, unless you know, I know it has some great uses for like fucking like epilepsy or these different things where it's like I saw somebody take THC oil and like they had Parkinson's disease, and it shows how like they actually were able to stop shaking, where it's like before they're like, you know, nonstop, and like it does these wonderful things. But unless you're really medicating a problem, you know, I just, you know, you can convince yourself though that it's like, no man, I'm better on weed. Are you though? Let's take it to determine that.
Totally agree. 100%, man. So I guess we went way longer than we were supposed to here. I would love to get you back again, because there's other things I'd like to talk to you about. But I guess when you're getting along this good, the time goes by a lot faster than you expect. So
yeah, I'd be happy to come back on again, man. We can cover you know, anything else you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I thought maybe we'd get a little bit more into your background, maybe a little more steroid use, and we can get into the whole Brendan Schaub thing a little bit too.
That's great promise for episode 2.
Yeah, I think that'll be phenomenal. So man, that would be wonderful. First, let me just say thank you for coming on and taking time for me and for everybody watching, because this is awesome stuff. And
thanks for inviting me. You know, it's really cool to be reached out to people and feel like you know, people are still interested in having these conversations, because I always end up enjoying them, you know, even if I don't.
Right. And to relate with somebody like we have, it's been like really great just for me. I'm not trying to be selfish, but it's been fun and it's been great for me in general, because you meet tons of people, you find things in common, but it's a whole other thing when it's like, holy shit, like we got a lot to talk about here.
Yeah. Because we're similar ages and have this similar outlook that's like born out of experience, out of trial and error, you know.
Yes.
Because it's like, yes, a lot of people know a lot about steroids these days, or you can kind of become like a YouTube expert, but it's like, I was in the trenches fucking myself up, you know?
Yeah. And I always say the best teachers have probably made the most mistakes, and it's good to share them and talk about them and kind of help people out, you know, any way that possible. So
yeah, I agree, man. So hopefully the people watching enjoyed this, and we'll want to see you around too.
Oh, it's a guarantee, brother. So thank you again. We'll talk here and get something else scheduled. And everybody, like I said, go check Mark out everywhere. His Instagram is fucking awesome. Look him up, follow him everywhere he's got social media, and keep supporting him because he's an amazing guy.
Yeah, and more things coming out, more podcasts coming, rebranding stuff, and we'll be putting it out on my YouTube, for example, soon. So make sure to follow me on at Hella Mark Harley everywhere, and I have a lot of things in store, even if you don't see much. Like I post a little bit to my YouTube, but it'll be a lot more in the very near future.
Awesome. Well, we'll be looking forward to it, brother. So thanks again, Mark, and everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Stay subscribed because episode 2 is going to be just as good, if not better. So Dylan Gemelli signing off.